is Tuesday, July 17th, approximately 4 p.m. The Personnel Human Services Committee will come to order. Roll call, please.
Riders.
Here.
Duranta.
Here.
Krieger.
Yes, sir.
Begay.
Here.
Kuna.
Here.
Lutz.
Here.
Herrick.
He's excused.
Thank you. Warren present.
Okay. Minutes of June 19th, 2018. Support. It's been moved and supported. All in favor signify by the usual sign.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, carried. It's time for public input. Anybody here from the public wishing to address the committee today, do so at this time. Seeing none, we'll move under petitions and communications. Under A, Barb Klimaszewski from MIDC Mid-Michigan Regional Manager, and Andrea LaBean, Director of the Office of Criminal Defense. And we have a PowerPoint, and also we would like to recognize Barb for being the recipient of the 2018 Great Lakes Bay Women's Lawyers, quite an award. Congratulations on that.
I'm going to let Andrea do the PowerPoint thing, and we can see what else you might have some questions after she's done.
Okay, good afternoon. I put together a slideshow, but if you have any questions, please interrupt me. But last year, about this time, we started on filling out our compliance plan with the state. And basically, our compliance plan was approved by the commission. All the money that we requested, we have received. It will become available to us at or around October 1st after we have a contract with the state signed, and the money is put into a special account by the MIDC. That money then becomes available, and at that point, we have 180 days after the money becomes available to be compliant with our plan. The major changes to Bay County are that the clients must be represented at the time of arraignment. Currently, that's not being done. Overflow attorneys, so the attorneys that are not in the Office of Criminal Defense or the Public Defender's Office, the other attorneys that need to be utilized because of conflicts or because of the number of cases that were being assigned. Those attorneys have to have continuing legal education, which is something that our office already requires. So they're going to have to fulfill that requirement as well. And also, the assigned attorneys have to meet with the indigent clients within 3 days. I know my office and the Public Defender's Office meets with our clients as soon as possible, but now this is going to be a mandated requirement and something that we're going to have to keep track of. The representation at arraignment, when we developed our plan, we thought the best way to handle it would be to contract that service out. It was something we worked with Barb and the MIDC Commission to see what's the best way to handle it. And in this county, it seems that contract attorneys would be the best way to do it. Once we put out bids for contract attorneys and it's been accepted and we have to start implementing the plan, the contracts attorneys are going to be responsible for all the arraignments. So that includes our walk-in arraignments and our in-custody arraignments. Our walk-in arraignments right now are done in the morning, and those are people that basically present themselves to the court. It's on tickets, or if they find out they have a warrant, they come in at 10:30, go before the judge and say, I have a warrant or a ticket and I need to get arraigned. So they're going to be responsible for that. And the in-custody clients, those are people that are in jail. Those are generally done in the afternoon. Generally, those are people who are charged with felonies or who are driving around with a warrant out that they weren't aware of and got picked up and put in jail and had to get arraigned the next day. The overflow attorneys, currently we have a list of overflow attorneys. These attorneys are going to be subject to the same requirements that our office is going to be subjected to, both of our offices. They're going to have to continue with legal education. The overflow attorneys are going to have to do that, and also the contract attorneys who represent the clients at the time of arraignment are also going to be required to do that. When we put the plan together, we kind of had an idea of what kind of training was going to be needed, approximately how many attorneys were going to be added, and requested funding for that, which all got approved. So we should be good there. The first meeting with the clients within 3 days is also going to be a big change for both of our offices. If overflow attorneys are assigned to new cases, they're also going to, again, be required to meet with them within 3 days. For clients that are in custody, that means that we're going to have to go over to the jail within 3 days of getting assigned to meet with them face-to-face. For clients that are out on bond, they'll have to make an appointment with our office within 3 days. Now, the funding, all the changes that we had to make to bring our county up to compliance, we checked to see how much that would cost, and any additional costs we requested from the state. Our local share was determined by using the baseline costs of 2010, 2011, and 2012. Our local share was calculated to be a little over $622,000. Now, that local share was calculated before the offices were split. So that's a benefit to our county, because if it costs more now, we're not being tagged with that additional cost, because they looked at what we're currently using, what our currently funds are being used to determine kind of like our baseline. So they used that. Also, we got the number of an additional $29,000, a little over that, that they would have to fund us. We got that number from looking at what defendants pay right now, basically reimburse the county for any attorney fees. So we're going to get that back. So right now, after subtracting our local share and all the other calculations, it looks like we'll be getting over $453,000 from the state. The biggest expense is the contract attorneys. When we put out a bid for that, just to get an estimation, it was a little over $100,000. There's going to be some additional personnel that would be added, an additional part-time Office of Assigned Counsel employee, also an additional part-time deputy that would be available for us to meet with the clients and for the arraignment attorneys to meet with the individuals prior to being arraigned in front of the judge. That's a lot more face time. When we go to the jail, we have to have a deputy take the person out of their cell, bring them to us, take them back to their cell, and kind of, somebody likes to keep an eye on us every once in a while too to make sure it's okay. So that requires more work out of them. So we anticipated that. We also requested money for investigation experts and expert testimony, things like we're looking for like mitigation experts and psychological experts, things like that. We did an estimate of how much money we would need, and we received that. We'd also requested money for equipment like iPads for the arraignment attorneys, some software to determine what conflicts exist. Right now, there is no software. It's just an eyeball. You know, the person who currently works at the Office of Assigned Counsel can get an idea of, oh, I think this person is a victim on their case, so we can't assign it to them. But quite frequently, I will get a case and say, I can't take it because this victim is also a defendant on another case, and I can't represent those two conflicting interests. Also an additional Polycom, mostly for at the jail. So that can be utilized for arraignment purposes or for initial meeting purposes, and the training for the new overflow attorneys. The MIDC has proposed 4 more standards, so we're going to be going through this whole rigmarole again shortly. I'm really excited about it. It's going to be fun. The biggest issues there is the independence from the judiciary, our workloads, which are starting to get analyzed right now. My office is doing a case study for the MIDC where they have us track all of our hours and time depending on what clients we have, what they're charged with. So that's time consuming in and of itself, but it's also pretty eye-opening at how much time we spend on certain things. The qualifications and review of all the attorneys, and also basically the pay for attorneys. Is there incentives or disincentives for people to not want to be public defenders or be public defenders? They want to encourage people to represent these clients. So we get to do this all over again. Any questions?
Mr. Coon?
Thank you, sir. Obviously, this is going to be better for the clients, and that's why a year or so ago we were in support of that, regardless of the cost. But you didn't mention, you're asking for money, you're receiving money. Ultimately, in comparison to what we're going to be receiving from the state for under this new program, as to what the state contributed in the previous year prior to that, are we going to be paying more or paying less, or is the state going to be paying?
The state contributed 0 up until now. This is all new money. And so everything that you're doing because we have asked you to do it with our standards is completely funded by the state. The calculation of the local share is to just make sure that you maintain the same level of spending that you had in 10, 11, and 12, which are the 3 years before our commission was created. But all of the things, and the same will be true for the next 4 standards. Anything that's required of you under these standards is on our bill.
Will that be an annual?
Yes. There'll be an annual plan submitted, and all things that are as a result of our standards will be funded by the state.
Okay, that sounds great. First, I think it's good that we are giving people better service, and we're receiving more money. So is that going to be a positive reflection on your budget, that we're receiving more money from the state than we have gotten in the past, or is that just going to be additional money used in the courts?
Because I'm not sure what that.
What I'm saying is we're receiving money from the state we never got before.
Right.
Is that going to have a positive impact on the budget for?
Well, it'll have a positive effect on the representation. At least that's our aim. There will be more money spent because there will be more services provided. For future reference, there was an amendment to our statute that was passed at the same time of the budget. There will be an annual cost of living increase in your local share, but that's hopefully all that there will be. And also there will be, as far as the fees that are collected from people, 20% of that is going to have to get kicked back over to the state. So you'll keep 80 and send us 20. But that should be, overall, you should still be getting way more money. I expect, based on the caseload standards, you'll probably have a staff expansion in your public defender offices, because I think the caseloads here look like they're very high. We're right now, this study that Andrea was referring to, we're doing what I think will probably be an example for a nationwide analysis of this. The numbers that they recommend right now for how much work an attorney should be allowed to carry and still be able to do a good job, they were developed a long time ago and nobody's entirely sure where the data came from. But we know this, that it was before there was DNA, it was before there was body cams, it was before there was video cameras on police cars. All of those kinds of things cause the attorney to have to do a lot more work on a case. So what our study is doing, and the reason that we're asking people like Andrea to keep such close track of their work, is because right now it's just classified as felonies. That basically the standard is 150 felonies a year is a full-time job. Well, a felony is you got a pistol in your glove compartment without a carry permit. A felony is a multiple homicide. Those aren't the same thing. So we're trying to classify it so that we can weight cases more accurately, so that we know a little bit more about how much time people are required to come to do a good job. And we're working with Grand Corporation to do it. And so we expect that sometime in the next 3 or 4 months, that study will be completed and we'll have a much more accurate picture of what is overtaxing the attorneys. And when that's all said and done, I will expect that you will need some staff expansions in your public defender offices, because I expect we'll probably look at your caseloads as being a little higher than we think is appropriate.
Expansion, would that be funded through the state as well?
Absolutely. Anything that it comes from our standards is on our end.
Thank you.
Yep.
Commissioner Lutz?
So if we have, like, through this study, if it determines that 150 is a good number, and we have way more than that, then that's
You'll need
where
to
you're
add
saying-
lawyers.
That's where you're saying we'll have to add
Yep.
more in-house lawyers.
Yep.
Now, is that to reduce the number of outside lawyers that we're gonna have to
Not
hire?
necessarily. The other alternative would be to have more outside lawyers if you wanted to do it that way. You could, this is a local control program. Each jurisdiction gets to decide how they want to handle these problems. So your choices would be, do you want to hire more public defenders, or do you want to have more lawyers on the appointment list? You will decide that.
Commissioner Krieger?
So Barb, we meet again. The last time you were here with your big stick, we really upset the cart, let's say. It was tough to take the plans and what you laid out for us, hiring attorneys, changing the physical location. We did all of that. And we continue to try to abide by these new set of regs. And when you say there'd be an expansion, obviously somebody's got to watch to make sure that these outside attorneys are doing their job within the 3 days.
Yes.
So that means the courts are going to have to basically hire a babysitter
Not
to
the
make
courts.
sure.
Not the courts. The way this statute is now set up, when we began, it was joint jurisdiction between the courts and the funding unit. The Supreme Court, about 1.5 years ago, said, close to 2 years now, I guess, said no. That after they kind of looked everything over, they decided that because of that standard right there, independence from the judiciary, that it was a little weird to have us working from the judiciary and trying to achieve independence from the judiciary. So there was a statute amendment that occurred in the end of 2016, that I think went into effect in January of 2017, that took us out of the courts. So the courts are not going to be participating after this new standard goes in. So it's the funding. Now, in your particular structure, because you have 2 offices and a contract with arraignment attorneys and an agreement with an assigned counsel list, we would be looking to have you have a person put in charge of that would be able to be the liaison with us, one person, that we think should have the authority to administer all of these things, to determine, for example, another one of these new standards will be the qualification of the attorney. So the attorney that just graduates from law school is not going to be able to take a murder case. We have some qualifications that will be set up. How much experience do you need to do this level of cases? How much do you need to do the next level, and so forth? That will also need to be tracked. There will be a variety of things that need to be tracked and enforced in various ways. So we're looking to have a person that manages all of that, which in future years, when that happens, should also be on our docket.
So what I'm hoping, it's not that I don't believe in Santa Claus, but I'm
Santa
glad.
is here with the money,
That's-
right here.
Exactly. So anytime you come to Bay County bearing new regs, I hope that back that you have
And
with all our money is
remember
good.
you doubted it, and here we are with $453,000, so,
Correct. So, thank you.
okay.
If I could just follow up a little bit with the money, it is a neutral cost to the county. However, when they determined how much the county is responsible for, they used figures from before the offices were split. So they took that amount and said, this is what you have to contribute. And then they said, how much does it cost you right now, and what more do you need? So any additional funding that you guys put in with the expansion, if we have a higher rate because of employees and benefits and things like that, that's really getting taken care of a lot with what we requested. So I can't come out and say it's a huge, like it's an absolute 100% benefit, but I'm sure if you sit down and look at the numbers of what you paid then, what you're paying now, and what we requested to keep it, that's additional money that we're getting from the state.
So
lot of
it's going to be a wash then when it's all said and done.
No, it's not a question. It's a lot of new money to get improved services.
Correct. And I mean, I think we're coming out on top on this because you split the offices and everybody was concerned about the money because, quite frankly, you know, demolition or adding new walls is one thing, but then you have the constant paying of the employees. That keeps on coming.
Right.
But see, when they said how much, this is what you're responsible for, you didn't have those costs. And then we said, we need this money to maintain where we're at, and then we need additional money. So you're making money, I guess.
Exactly. Because if your local share had been calculated on your present costs, you would have received a lot less. Your local share was calculated on a lower level because it was calculated off of years 10, 11, and 12 from before you incurred all these costs with the new office. So your timing worked in your favor so that you ended up with your obligation being lower even though your present spending is higher.
I think the only reason why it worked was because you came in here and talked to us and explained and gave us an opportunity to make changes that would be to our advantage in the future. So again,
Definitely worked to your advantage. So.
thank you.
Commissioner Begic?
I had a question about the partial payments from indigents, and that's been a hot topic. So it ended up that we don't have to pay the 80%, what's the split
The
now?
way it ended up is, and by the way, this is not in effect in this plan year. The statute that triggers this doesn't go into effect until December 28th. And the way we are understanding that is that because that's in the middle of a plan year, it would trigger into the next plan year. But the way it's now is, let's say you get $1,000 from a client, you will keep $800, you will send $200 to the state.
Yeah. One other question about expert witness. I think I read recently there was a judge that expert witnesses have to be allowed, or you have to allow expert witnesses in indigent defense cases.
Well, this is a little bit of a complicated question. The judge decides whether the expert is qualified and whether the topic that the expert wants to talk about is appropriate to that case. What we are doing is funding the expert and trying to make the playing field a little even, because right now the prosecution side can consult an expert and no one ever knows. They can call up the expert, get the information, decide whether or not they want to use the expert, whatever, and nobody ever gets to hear about that because they really don't have to tell the defense side about that, or the court either. Whereas now, if the defense person wants to use an expert, they have to go to the judge, they have to file a motion, they have to have a hearing, all before they ever get to even spend any time talking to the expert. Well, ultimately, that will not be in the judge's hands. When we get to the independence from the judiciary portion, the person who decides the part about calling the expert, consulting, and so on and so on, will be the manager that handles all of the MIDC issues in your jurisdiction. So it's intended to even up the position with the prosecution. But it still will be the judge's job to decide whether that expert is really expert and whether the topic they want to testify on is actually relevant to the case.
I've done some expert witness, and usually the expert witnesses on both sides sort of negate each other and then still come back.
Well, that happens. I've seen that.
We did request money in our plan specifically for expert witnesses. So if my office or the public defender's office wants to consult an expert, now we have the funds available for that. We just have to make sure one person isn't using it more than the other, or that's when the manager comes in, or we have a street fight, or whatever needs to happen for the money. But right now, way it is right now is if I wanted an expert, I would have to go to the judge and say, please give me an expert. And he could tell me very likely no. And then we go to court and my guy gets convicted and then he appeals and they send it back and say it's ineffective assistance of counsel, which they do a lot because of experts or not calling them, then that money's on you. So it really comes back to the county being liable if I'm not doing my job well, but I tried and I couldn't. So I think this is going to work out really well for, covering the county and making sure that they're protected and also making sure our clients are protected too.
Commissioner Lutz?
Yeah, getting back to what we were talking about earlier, the 10, 11, and 12 numbers, let's just use the wrong ones. And so back then it cost us $300,000 to run our, and we changed it and went to our new system that we're using now. Now it costs $500,000, so that an increase of $200,000 is now being covered by the state.
Yes.
And that's going to be an increase to our budget that we can
Correct.
use for our payroll and all that other
Yes.
stuff.
Yes.
Miss Claus did perform and she got us everything we needed, so yes, we got money.
So I just
Ho,
want,
ho, ho.
just want to kind of put some numbers at that, just so we
Yeah.
know what we're talking about.
Yes, that's exactly right. And your local share was calculated, because of which 3 years it was calculated from before you had the double officers. And the contract was a lower spending level than the second office, so you come out with a lower base amount.
Right.
Like I said, you'll have a COLA increase on there now, but still your baseline number is always going to be lower because of that time.
Right, and then any additional will be to cover all these new
Right.
requirements for the 3 days.
Correct.
All that type of
Yeah.
training,
Yeah.
stuff like that.
All that, yeah.
And with where we're at right now and what the past standard was of how many clients a person should get and where we're at now, we're gonna need a lot more attorneys, I think, so.
But that's under the new one.
Right.
That's under the new one, so we get more money.
Giving you a heads up that you'll be looking at that for next year's plan, but again, it's state funding, that one of the things that is in the works right now is a permanent funding line in the legislature set up a permanent funding line for this program. So they haven't completely decided on that, but that's in the works and I'm fully expecting that to happen.
Executive Barcia?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to make two comments. One, as you all know, the decision was made on MIDC prior to my becoming the county executive. And I had trepidation, as Barb knows. We had several meetings about my experience in the legislature and the possibility of another unfunded mandate.
He didn't believe in Santa Claus.
So I just want to say that Barb Klimaszewski has been a strong advocate for counties with the legislature and Governor Snyder's office, and we thank you for that, Barb. And also I wanted to compliment Andrea LaBean and her great staff for what appears to be a very smooth functioning transition into this new service for indigent defendants. And from the numbers I've seen, you've been very busy and you've been getting the job done. So I want to express our gratitude, my gratitude to both of you for being instrumental in getting us to this point. Just hope that it lasts long into the future and that we don't experience, due to budget difficulties or whatever in the future, a lack of commitment to fulfill that funding for these mandates that are
Well,
coming
our
down.
hope is that permanent funding line should help resolve that.
Great. And also our corporation council worked hard on developing the local policy here and also supporting the launch of the program here in Bay County. And it's my understanding all 83 counties are on board with us at this
Well, we
point.
have 3 of them that are in mediation, but everybody else is in.
Any further questions? Well, we'd like to thank you, Andrea, for your presentation, and Barb for your representation.
Thank you.
Thank you
And I
very
would
much.
move to receive it.
Support. Motion to receive the PowerPoint and the plans.
Yes.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, signify by the usual sign.
Aye.
Opposed? Opposed, same sign, carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Under B, Bay County Clerk staffing requests. The full-time temporary clerk position for 2018 cycle, election cycle.
So moved.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Discussion. Commissioner
Actually,
Krieger.
I'll turn it over to Mr. Redmond because my go ahead.
$5,000 for this is already in the budget, so basically what you're approving is for her to fill.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by the usual sign.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, carried. Under 2, full-time USWA TU-07 clerk position to handle concealed weapons processing. What is your pleasure?
I'll move.
Is there support?
I'll support it so we can have discussion.
Okay. Mr. Redmond?
I did an analysis of the request and went back to, it started in 2015, but 2016 is a full year and 17 is a full year. And the increase in revenue, there might be 20% more now, will not justify a full-time position. We're already paying for 30% of a position now.
Commissioner Krieger?
I'd like to, Tiffany,
Yes, sir.
so I'm assuming you probably had or tried to have communications with the clerk to discuss this position, correct?
Yes.
And, you know, as a group, we approved having a study done of the clerk's office to try to justify or say, yes, you have the right amount of people, or no, you don't, and we're lacking in some areas. I really haven't seen, or maybe I just didn't understand what came out of that report, saying she's short and we should fill it, or she has what she needs, or because everybody's knocking on the door to get a CCW, there's more work than what we have normally had. So I'm coming back to you, looking for some direction on what's going on in that office, and is she at the right level, or do you believe that she needs the added support just to take care of these CCWs?
So I'm going to break that into two different questions.
Good.
Because the study that was done was handled through Corporation Counsel's office, not the personnel office, due to the litigation.
But I would think that you were in that line or involved with it, being that hiring of personnel is kind of a priority for you.
I received a copy of it, but that was the extent of my involvement in that study.
I can answer the separate question about the study and what the recommendations were for you. I know that Tiffany has had separate communication that she had with the clerk regarding specific questions for this request related directly to CCW.
Okay.
And she can answer that for you, and I can answer.
Why don't we go to you first?
Oh, great.
Thank you.
Okay. The actual report that was drafted in terms of a needs assessment did not give a specific recommendation as to how many people the clerk would or would not need in her office. What they did was gave a number of different alternatives, and I believe that it said that one of those alternatives could be additional people hired in her office. Some of the other alternatives could have been a more efficient use of equipment, technology, and workflow in her office that could also reduce the workload on her employees. So there were many different options that were offered, no specific recommendations stating there needs to be 1 employee, there needs to be 1.5 employees. What it did was it gave a group of options, and unfortunately for us, that particular not wage study, but office or time study didn't break down into specifics what statutorily mandated duties needed to be done, how much time was dedicated to CCW permits and processing, things of that nature. It did not get that specific. It simply said
these are the number of hours that the people are working, this is the amount of backlog that we have. These are some of the things that could reduce the workload. You could improve technology, you could improve processing, the way the office operates, you could hire additional employees. So it basically gave different options. This CCW permit request, I think, can be broken down into more specific data points, basically how much is being brought in to this fund, how many CCW permits are being processed, how much time each one of those CCW permits takes to process, how much employee time it utilizes, and those are some of the questions I believe that Tiffany asked the clerk.
Okay, so in response to what you're saying we paid for, we really didn't get any concrete direction, correct?
That would be a correct statement, yes.
So I won't say we wasted our money with them doing it,
I
but
would
it's-
never say that.
but I could. Okay, well, thanks, Amber. So I'm back to you now, Tiff.
As far as the second question, I have requested additional information from the clerk, specific information to the quantity of permits that are processed, how long they take to process to make a recommendation one way or the other, but as of today, I have not received a response to those.
So then, being that we don't have good information, I'd like to refer this back then to administration.
Support.
Been moved and supported. Any discussion? Commissioner Beginner.
Question about, there are some financials that were presented to us, so I guess I need an analysis. I'd like to refer to it, but I guess I'd like an analysis of, are we making more money than we're spending for CCW? I guess that would be the question I would ask next week, or whenever we talk about it. You know, is the income due to licenses offset by expenses, or what, you know, what's the bottom line?
We are currently creating or adding to our fund balance in the CCW area. It's roughly anywhere from 10,000 to 12,000 a year. So we are not actually, we're utilizing the 30%. In it's not 30% of one person's, it's 30% of the highest paid person in there is how it was calculated, but it's actually done through a journal entry to account for those expenses. So that's how the expenses are getting in there. But we are bringing in roughly 44 to 46,000 a year is what we've been averaging. So, we're spending about half of that, I would say. So there's room to already put a little more time there, and it would still cover those costs. But also back to, if I could, Mr. Chair, back to the original study that was done in her office, just so you're aware, the IT department offered technology to that department and was refused.
Of course.
I did ask to have scanners put in there. We did offer, we went through I did go through the study when I first started here. We did find things, a lot of upgrades that the IT department could do, and those were not allowed to happen through that office, just so you're aware.
Commissioner Lutz.
So, between the staff, you're gonna get us information as to, the number or increase in the number of permits being asked for, maybe.
I have requested that information. I don't personally have access to the quantity of permits that are pulled. I can only see the dollar values that are going into the general.
Right, but so are we gonna get like a 2-year history of this? Are we
We have revenues and expenses, but we don't have the numbers as far as how many permits are being,
or how much time it takes to process them or things. So I understand that the board wants to refer it back to administration. I just want to clarify that this is an elected official's request, and we can provide all of the information that you're requesting that we have as it relates to the finances, but in terms of the day-to-day operations of the official's office, that's information that needs to come from the official's office, because we don't control that. And I just want to make sure that you understand that we don't control that information.
Right, well, we understand.
Commissioner Krieger.
So if we don't control it and we can't get answers, to justify the expense, then I would say when this comes back, if it comes back in Ways and Means or whatever, that there's no way that I would be able to justify saying, oh yeah, let's put another person on, just because she asked for it.
Any further discussion? Mr. Radner?
You know, we spent a few years ago when we went through this issue with the clerk, both sides spent several $1,000s on attorneys. And it was all over, we didn't increase any employees, number of employees. And you can't go by, if somebody makes revenue, then they get employees, because there'd be a lot of departments that don't make a plus. Don't take in revenue, wouldn't have the employees, or the treasurer's office could have all 50. You can't go by that. In 16, she took in $46,000. In 2017 was $44,000. Now it's going to be maybe 10% or 15% more this year, I project. But that doesn't justify hiring a full-time person.
Mr.
Because
Krieger?
one person doesn't handle these licenses.
Commissioner Krieger?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So with all of this being said, I guess where I'm at is, let me rescind my motion. And what I'd like to say at this point is, because we didn't have information satisfying me personally on justifying it, and we have kind of an unwritten rule, if somebody's making a request of the board, that individual, whether it's elected or not, should have been here to answer the questions. So as far as I'm concerned, I make a motion that at this point we nix the deal.
Support.
And not drag this on, get it over with now. Because if you didn't get the answers to the questions that you needed a week ago, I doubt that you're going to get it a week from now. So that'd be my motion.
Commissioner Andrea?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You stated approximately $46,000 was in revenue was taken in, divided by how much a permit is. It's about 350 permits a year, or approximately 30 a month. So just to kind of, it's
About one a day.
1-2 a day. And she's already 30%. I think she's well funded as she is right now, myself.
Okay, so let me get this straight. Commissioner Krieger withdrew his motion to refer to administration. After doing so, made a motion to reject.
As your parliamentarian, Commissioner McGick made the motion, Commissioner Krieger supported it. So
No.
Mr. Krieger would have to withdraw.
Ernie made the motion, I supported it. Then Vaughn mentioned
The
it.
original one.
The original motion was Commissioner McGick made a motion to grant the request. Commissioner Krieger supported for discussion.
Yeah.
In discussion, another motion was made which supersedes to refer to administration. Then withdrew that motion to refer to administration and made a new motion to reject the offer. So we're back to the original motion, and we need to vote on the original motion.
Okay.
And so, being so, let's do a roll call.
Durantek,
No.
Krieger,
No?
McGiff,
Yes.
Coonan,
No.
Lutz,
No.
Ryder.
No.
5-1.
Okay.
Motion defeated.
So the motion is defeated. We have another motion to reject the request and a support. Let's do a roll call again.
This is the motion to
reject.
table.
This is a motion to actually reject the request, right? Yeah.
And who supported that?
Commissioner Kuhn.
Point of order here, just real quick, so I have an understanding. I think Commissioner Begic voted, or moved the question, which was filling the position, and it was supported for debate only. And then Commissioner Krieger made the motion to refer, which he rescinded, so we voted on the motion to approve the position, and it was supported. We had debate, and then we just voted to not fill that position. So I don't know why we have to do something again.
Right.
I think we're done.
You really don't.
Yeah.
You can't qualify your motion to support. You either support or you don't.
Didn't we just do
For
that?
instance, you can't say, well, I'm moving, I support it for the purpose of discussion. It doesn't, the purpose of discussion doesn't matter. You either make a motion to, or you make a support for a motion.
Wasn't
Can't
that
qualify.
done?
But we don't need to table it because we defeated the motion,
Yeah.
right? Bob?
Pardon?
Me. We don't need to table it because we defeated it.
To the parliamentarian, do we need to vote on a motion to reject request? Or table it at this time, after we
You
defeated?
don't need to, you already rejected it.
I
Okay,
agree.
No sense beating a dead horse.
I think we rejected it.
very good.
Okay, so we're good on,
We're done.
we're done with that. So nothing there. Okay, under C, from the health officer, we have an independent contractor agreement with nurse practitioners. What is
So
your
moved.
pleasure?
Support.
It's been moved, supported. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by using sign.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, carried. For 2018 and 2019 agreement with Northeast Michigan Community Service Agency and Head Start. What is your pleasure?
So moved.
Support.
It's been moved, supported. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by the usual sign.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, carried. From the Personnel Director, we have for Health Department, the WIC program, immunization clinic, a typist. What is your pleasure?
So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by the usual sign.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, carried. For WIC program outreach worker, what is your pleasure?
So moved.
Support.
Been moved and supported. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by the usual sign.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, carried. Bay County Community Health Clinic, a medical assistant, what is your pleasure?
So moved.
Support.
Been moved, supported. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by the usual sign.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, carried. From the Department of Aging, a driver part-time and a cook part-time, what is your pleasure?
So moved.
Support.
Discussion, Commissioner Krieger.
Yep, Beth, if I could, so I know that we always try to have some backup, like with 911, you know, they try to have people there that would come into the program should there be unopened. So for our drivers, how many do we usually carry?
We usually carry 10,
And backup we would have?
about 7 right now.
Okay,
Yeah. Right now, what's happening is we have a 4-hour window to deliver meals to our seniors, and they, in that 4-hour window, also is cleaning up the van, putting away the bricks for the hot pads, doing everything. And doing the cleanup, basically, of their van, putting away the hot bricks, cleaning out the bags, things like that. And we're just hitting that 4-hour window of delivery. So I did bring, bring kind of where we are at, meal delivery-wise, and congregate-wise. Right now, we're projected to do over 200,000 meals for this year. And the year is January through December, so that we have a complete control of our count. About 161,000 in home-delivered meals and about 39,000 in congregate.
that's a lot of apples.
That's a lot of apples. A lot of apples to cook, a lot of apples to deliver. You can see the projected part, just as we're going by last year's numbers. That's what we cautiously project, but you can see in the month of June, we had 11,000 projected, and you can't see that part, but now we did 13,755 meals in the month of June. Right now, we don't know July's numbers because we're still in the middle of the month. But as of this moment, every one of our grants, except for personal care, homemaking, and personal care and homemaking that are not, have not used up the grant completely, and that'll happen this month. So we will have used up our grant before our projected of August.
Thank you.
So that's
Thanks for the information.
You're welcome. Welcome.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, signify by the usual sign.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, carried. Under 3, recreation facilities, custodian for general labor at the Civic Arena. What is your pleasure?
So moved.
And move supported. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, signify by the usual sign.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, carried. For the juvenile home, a youth development worker, 2, at part-time. What is your pleasure?
So moved.
Support. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, signify by the usual sign.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, carried. From the Office of the Sign Counsel, the May report, motion received, is in order.
So moved.
Support.
Then moved and supported. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, signify by the usual sign.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, carried. Any referrals? Seeing none, unfinished business? Commissioner Krieger.
I guess we consider unfinished business. I know there was a meeting at the Hampton Township last Thursday in reference to the digging of a pond at the golf course. If I could get maybe a little overview of what was discussed at that for us, so that we can continue to be in the loop, that'd be great.
Sure. Hampton Township Planning Commission was taking a look at the site use and reviewing the plan. It was approved after some discussion. One of the things that we might need to add to our current plan is some fencing over some of the entrances by the maintenance barn and the water tower, and figure that stuff out. We don't exactly have an answer yet, but we can do that a couple different ways. Are you interested in what the discussion topics were, or?
Just anything that would add to the cost of the project is what I'm looking for.
Just the fencing that I can remember off the top of my head. And I haven't actually seen a official document from their discussion, but that's the part that I remember. And remember the way that Fisher Contracting basically said they would do the work is if we wanted them to put up a fence or if we wanted them to do any additional work, they just take that off of the money that they would be giving us for the pond and the player football. So we could do that in-house, we could have them do it, we could figure out a few different ways to tackle that.
We don't have a firm number right now, though, as far as what that project's going to benefit the county by doing.
They said that it would be up to 104,000 cubic yards, $1 per yard. Now that all is dependent on what actually they take out. So if they only take out 95,000 cubic yards, that would be where the dollar figure is. But they definitely said the need is still there, and they are still planning and interested in the project.
So if the fencing is something that we have to do because of the rules of Hampton Township, that'll be part of the contract that Amber will look over and decide?
Yes.
Okay, and then hopefully that contract would be shared with the board then, so we can look at all the fine print.
Absolutely, and we'll also make sure that the contract and the proposal goes through our MRMA representative,
Yep.
so they can give us a risk assessment and let us know whatever it is that we need to do for risk liability.
Okay, appreciate it, thank you.
Any other discussion? Kristen, I guess I was there too, and what I do remember is they asked the county to come up with a maintenance plan for the pond. They also talked about possible need for a circulating pump, which would add to the cost. They also talked about being treated for mosquitoes, and I don't know today, I guess I have that question. the other ponds, and I believe there's 4 of them, do we treat for mosquitoes out there? And being a golfer, I got to tell you, you know, I went out on that back 9 several times, and they about carried me off there, those mosquitoes. They're nasty out there. And I was out there with my wife and son, and they were as well. Matter of fact, we might not even finish that evening because they were nasty. I know, and adding another pond over there, certainly, and we can talk about the ditches and the mosquitoes coming out of the ditches, and I don't know who treats them, or I would assume it is mosquito control. But then again, adding that pond, I would assume that there's going to be more of a need at times to do that. So I guess I'd like to see once that maintenance plan is developed, and as well as if we're going to have to get a circulating pump in there. And you know, when you talk about cubic feet or whatever, it's hard for me to visualize just how big of an area that is. And I know that in the discussions that they had out there was some talk about, because there are apartment houses out there, a lot of young children, and you know, I know there's ponds out there, and we haven't had problems that we know of anyways, because we've never had any complaints that I've ever heard. But the location of this pond, and I went and took a look at the site, and where you come in the main road coming into the course off of Hampton, and as you pull in there and you go past our juvie home and special care, just before you get up to the clubhouse itself, you pull over towards Night, and you can see where that pond is, you know, and so there were questions about all the young people around it. If there were going to be a problem, could possibly be a problem of children getting in and taking a dip. I mean, we have no security out there at present. We don't have cameras. I don't think there's cameras out there. So I mean, I get the fence deal as aesthetically on a golf course. You don't go out on a golf course. I've golfed enough that I've never been out on a course where I've seen a fence. However, I know that kids will be kids, and it's pretty accessible. Even they were worried about the access for the maintenance drive off of Knight Road. That's where they talked about putting up a gate there. But that main drive coming in there, I gotta wonder, I think we would be better served, at least if we had some cameras. And then I don't know who monitors that stuff, but I just think it's really accessible, and I think we need to think a little bit more in that maintenance plan about some kind of security out there and making sure that those kids aren't using it for their little swimming pool. So.
If I could.
Sure.
Maintenance plan is definitely something that we can and we will be making. But remember that we already do maintenance on all of our current existing ponds. And if you recall from the discussion during the planning meeting, there are requirements for the grade of the pond and the slope of the pond where they say even a child can get out, and our plan far exceeds that requirement. So the planning commission to me seemed pretty satisfied with the fact that we were over and above the recommended grade in order to, if anyone were to fall in, if a child were to fall in, which we've never ever, with all of the ponds out there, with the ditches that surround the whole place that are at least 12 foot straight down, we've never known a problem with. But the grade exceeds the requirement. Like, it's not as steep as you know what am I saying that correctly?
Right.
It exceeds the
drop off.
So, I don't recall, and Commissioner, let's see, I don't recall them telling us anything more that is required other than the fences over those crossings on night. Although again, I haven't seen an official document come from the planning commission yet.
But I guess my understanding was they wanted the county to develop a maintenance plan, is that correct?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, so again, in developing that plan, what I do as a commissioner, I have a concern about us safety. And it's not, I get that there's 4 other ponds out there, I get that. But I'm also concerned because the accessibility coming in. And I just want us to look at it. You know, the last thing I want to do is hear about, you know, somebody losing their life out there because they were swimming. I mean, we had a little pond off Cass Road, and when Jim and I were younger, we called it the mud hole. Yeah. And it was at the end of some farmer's field. And, you know, we used to go out there, and that was our swimming hole. Now, you know, in those days, you probably didn't worry so much about liability. At least, Jim, I don't ever remember us being kicked out of there or anything like that. But there is a concern about kids will be kids, and I just don't want us, I want us to kind of be covered. I don't want to have an accident out there where somebody could lose their life.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think you have a very reasonable, you know, concern, and I think we'll work diligently to try to address that. And I have fond memories of our time at the Cass Avenue Pond. Of course, you were the much stronger swimmer, so there wouldn't have been much liability for you. He was the star on the Bay City Central swimming team. So, and I was sort of much lower on the totem pole on the swimming team, but those were great memories, Tom. But I think you have,
good call.
You know, a legitimate concern, and we'll work hard to try to address that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're still under unfinished business, Commissioner McGinn.
I just want to get a quick report about Nashville. Just got back.
Yeah.
County executives there too. I was on the steering committee for health services, and we had like 13 resolutions we went through. Opioid crisis was big. I went to 3 sessions on it. The first one was, actually it was a Netflix video that we watched from Huntington, West Virginia. It talked about it from the perspective of the rescue team, the fire rescue, about the faith-based community trying to help out, and treatment people there too, and the problem they're having there is everywhere. So we had several sessions on it. There was a resolution about opioid use and about treatment and mental health treatment also, because they're tied together. The last one I went to was the coroners were being swamped with people that are overdosing in there, and they don't have enough coroners, and there's not enough, you know, people are medical examiners also, so it's a big concern, and costs money to do the autopsy. So it was a good session. We elected a new second vice president, Gary Moore. He's the judge. They're called judges in Kentucky, by the way. Some of the other states, they call them judges. In Texas and Kentucky, we call them judges, or magistrates, or supervisors, or different terms for the county commissioners. But we had about 3,000 county commissioners there, and a lot of good breakout sessions, and I would encourage you to go sometime. It's in Las Vegas next year. But you have to talk to somebody about funding for that, though. And I'm on the board of directors for MAC, so they do help underwrite our trip down there. So, well worth it. Good session.
Thank you, Commissioner McGinn. Anything else on the?
Mr. Chairman, I attended as well, not for the full conference, but for a part of it. I'm on the board of directors of the County Executives of America, and we usually meet in conjunction with NACO. Last year it was in Columbus, Ohio. I attended some sessions on opioid abuse. Senator Lamar Alexander also updated the attendees on what the federal government has been doing, the amount of money they're appropriating to address the national crisis that we're in. Also an affordable housing session that started at 9 a.m. and lasted until 3:30 p.m. That was very enlightening and educational, and also technology driving progress in local government. They brought a significant amount of information, written information back on that to see what we may be able to incorporate here in Bay County. And also, Commissioner Begic and I also attended the federal legislative agenda, and we're updated on what's happening at the federal level to protect the county's interests. And I just want to say on a final note, it was very educational. It was a working conference, they had some enjoyable receptions and dinners, but the conferees all took the conference very seriously, and I was impressed to learn just how respected, both in our state delegation of MAC as well as at the federal level, Commissioner Begic he's been very active. A lot of people know of Vaughn and his work in healthcare. He's a respected conferee, and Vaughn, I think, was helpful to Bay County and the state chapter of MAC that you were there and representing our interests.
Thank you. We're under new business now. Anything? No new business, miscellaneous? Commissioner Craig?
Thank you. Joel, a question for you. Over the last couple of weeks on the news, they talked about ticks and
Yes.
Lyme disease.
Yes.
And it's not necessarily coming in contact with ticks with a deer. It could be mice that might be carrying that type of an issue. So the question that I have is, do we have any cases of Lyme's disease in Bay County?
We have a few. We don't have a lot. Typically, you'll find more in more rural areas, especially up north. But with that being said, I'll give you an example. I was in St. Ignace about 3 weeks ago on the golf course there, and a tick landed on my leg.
Oh.
And there is a certain method. You just don't try to brush it off. You need to actually pull it out without, or in some cases you may not be able to do that, so you need to get tweezers to pull it out effectively, because you don't want part of the tick left in any part of the skin, and that is what helps transmit the Lyme's disease. They can sometimes come from deer, which is what we more commonly see Lyme disease associated with, but it can be other animals. It typically is not dog ticks or sand ticks or anything like that. If anyone has a question about a tick and they're able to get a hold of it, you can actually put it in a baggie, bring it to the health department. We'll help identify that. You can even take a picture of it and send it to us. In some cases, we'll send it off to Michigan State University in entomology. But usually we can identify, or a person can easily identify what they have by just going on the internet.
So when this tick attacked your leg, did it bite? How did you know it was there? Was it painful?
I must have looked at the right time, because it wasn't painful. It just felt like there was a bug on me. I was able to get it off my skin without any difficulty and without it embedding itself.
And so if residents have questions or have come in contact with a tick and they need some answers, they can call the health department and...
They can call the health department. They talk to one of the sanitarians or one of the communicable disease nurses. But even better yet, there is a plethora of information, both on the state health website, on our website, on the CDC website, and you probably find answers faster that way than you would calling us.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Commissioner McKay?
We talked about PFAS last week, and I just saw the governor is asking the Attorney General to go after the company that made the PFAS was just the last day or so, and so it's probably going to be more in the news.
It will be more in the news, and I did do a little bit of research in anticipation that we would have some questions today. As you know, PFAS, there are different types, but there's two that are in question, the PFOS and PFOA. They're ubiquitous, which means it's a big $20 word for it to be found everywhere, as you know. We talked about they were in Wordsmith and in the military bases. They're more associated with the foam, firefighting foam and things like that. But they're also part of tanneries. They're also part of weatherproofing and waterproofing as well. As far as Bay County goes, we have no known sites of PFAS contamination right now. With that being said, there has been some studies on some of the fish that are in the Saginaw River. Some of those have come up high, but they've also come up high in other chemicals like mercury and some of the PCBs as well. And those, the fish consumption advisories were updated, I believe, about 1.5 years ago in response to those tests that were done. The state is also planning on testing all public water supplies, and including schools with wells. Now, I don't believe there are any schools with wells here in Bay County, so that's a good thing. So we don't have to worry about that specifically. There is a lot of information out there, and I want to give this some perspective too. Right now, the action level, or what was recommended to be an action level, is 70 parts per trillion. And just to so you can understand the enormity of what, or even just how small a part per trillion is. In comparison, if you had 250 square miles, 1 square inch would be 1 part per trillion. So a very small amount can contaminate water. But even with that being said, from what I've been able to discern from some of the testing that the state has done already, they've tested the Midland Saginaw raw intake of the water supply. While there were some elevated levels, they weren't, to my knowledge, up to the 70 parts per million. And of course, there's treatment afterwards and filtering as well. There are a number of companies in the state of Michigan that are approaching local homeowners to get their water tested for PFAS. And we want people to be aware of this, is that right now, currently in Bay County, there are no known contaminated sites. And so there's no real reason to test the public water supply at this point in time. The state is going to do that, and when we get that information, we will share it as soon as possible with those out there. But with that being said, we also did some research into proper ways of sampling for PFAS. And for example, some of the things that you should not do when sampling would be to put on waders or Tyvek suits that have protective lining in there, because they already contain some of the chemicals and they could cross-contaminate. In addition to that, there are a number of different things in sun lotions and soaps that people can use that can cross-contaminate and throw false positives into the mix. With all this being said, we can provide a more full report. I probably could go on for hours and hours about the enormity of the problem, the complexity of the problem. But the long and the short of it is that all the testing is still a work in progress, and at this point in time, we want people to generally be aware of that we don't have no known sites of contamination here.
So Joel, just one last question to leave this vision in your mind, because there could be cross-contamination. Am I understanding then that if Joel goes out to do a sample, he's going to be naked?
I don't want to see that, and I'm sure that that's something that you don't want to see either, and it's not what we recommend. I will say this, it's not a very simple thing to do, okay? And even the type of container that you would take a sample in needs to be specific towards the test, because once again, the inner lining of the container can throw off false positives and cross-contaminate as well. There are a lot of companies that are trying to sell filters out to people that actually may not protect against PFAS, and so we don't want people getting into that type of situation where a salesman comes to your door and says, hey, I'm going to test your water for $800, and then I've got, a $3,000 water filtration system for you too. So, we want people to be educated. We want to educate folks on this. It's a very important issue, and, but it's a work in progress.
Thank you.
Any announcements? Motion to adjourn is in order.
So moved.
More support, all in favor, signify by the usual sign.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We're adjourned.